Hey everyone, welcome to another devlog for Vampires vs. Aliens. It's devlog number 7. Last time we talked about mana and how we plan to turn all of the skills to JSON. We still have mana working fine, but we have decided not to do the JSON part of the work for now. Deciding that it's just not really worth it yet for the level of investment in this game, and we're not really seeing that it's going to be a problem. It may end up being it, and if it does, then we will turn everything into JSON, but for the time being, we are just going to be hard coding this because it's a small indie game. Who really cares? In its place, though, we have managed to achieve a few other goals. We've managed to make a new active skill, required some code refactoring. We've also got a new support skill, Pierce, and all of these things are combining that we're starting to look pretty good for version 0.3. So let's start with a showcase of the new stuff. First, we have the new skill called Bone Bullet. So you can see here it's firing these bones, it's randomized what exact bone it flings out. It does less damage than Blood Arrow you would have seen before, but it fires faster, and it also fires 2 projectiles. Now you might be wondering why it's firing 2, and that's because it has an innate part of it, which is it doubles how many projectiles, which is really good for any source that can give you more projectiles, for example, multiple projectiles. As the player levels up and maybe they take multiple projectiles, which will go here, yep, UI has a little bit of a problem. This still has the 40% mana penalty, but now I've doubled the number of projectiles, and because this thing is already doubling it, it's gone from 3 to now 6. So that's pretty awesome. Of course, now there's a huge mana issue. We also have another new skill called Pierce. This is the Pierce tree. The Pierce tree is going to allow your projectiles to pierce. We found a playtesting that was a really powerful thing, so we've made it its own support. And we've also moved a notable that used to be on Blood Arrow to the Pierce tree because we think it makes more sense there, which is your projectiles do more damage as they travel. Now, I don't know if this was in the last update, but you'll notice now I have floating point numbers. You know how much you're hitting for, you know when you're hitting for it, but also importantly, when you crit, which, if I could get a crit, maybe I'll just take some crit chance nodes, make it a little easier to see. Come on, we'll get a crit eventually. Until I fix the mana issue, I might go the cheaper version. Cool. Come on, it's 15% chance. That's basically a 100% chance. There we go. You saw the numbers come up in floating red, so that means you've hit a crit. So that's a bit of visual feedback for the player, indicating that they have crit, and I think that's going to be a really, really nice to have feature for both playtesting and hopefully eventually in the full game when things look a little nicer. So those are the main highlights of this. We've added in crit. We've got a new support skill. We have a new active skill. We still have some empty notable nodes. Notably here, this one here is going to provide dodge. In our game, the first version of dodge we're going to try is instead of being a percentage chance to dodge attacks, it'll be a stacking buff. So every 3 seconds, every 2 seconds you go without taking damage, you get a stack of dodge. When you have a stack of dodge, it means the next time you would take damage, you don't, but you lose the stack of dodge. So this node here will increase the maximum stacks of dodge to 1 from 0, which would now allow you to dodge points of damage. It's one of the many ideas we have for damage mitigation. We're just trying this out. The advantage of this is it can scale a lot better. With dodge chance, if you have to do something kind of that I think is unfun in some fashion. You either have to cap it at some value, have it work logarithmically, which means it's harder to understand, or it's just really hard to balance, right? Do you let it go to 100%? Do you let it go to 60%? And if you only let it get to 50% or 60%, then it's not that useful. So instead of all of that, we're just trying to change how it works, and we'll play test it and see if it's any good. Going forward, the plan is to flesh this out. So we want to get in at least one more active skill for version 0.3. That'll be a melee skill. We want to get out at least 2 more support nodes, I think, that are really important to get out with version 3. First is a way to gain life, so it'll probably just be lifesteal. Second is a way to get mana, which will probably just be mana lifesteal, or mana steal. There will be more ways that we have planned, but just for version 3 to see if this is all functioning correctly and somewhat vaguely in the realm of balanced. that's what we're going to put out. So that's the plan going forward. Version 3 should be coming within a week or so, or within maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks. We do have some plans to get some sound in there as well. But yeah. Now for the code side of update, this is probably where less of you are interested in. There's been a ton of refactoring to enable us to do what we've done. Now thankfully, bone bullets themselves ultimately weren't too difficult. There was a few things we had to do to move things up a tier. So our skill tree class, which, so if you have a skill, it used to be the case that the active skill was tracking all of its attributes. Instead, we have that information held in the parent class. That way, each skill doesn't need to worry about it. It just takes the values as they're set and updated by all of this. Similarly, all of these recalculations, these used to sit in the child chart class, but hopefully they should be pretty standard across. And if they need to be overwritten by a particular skill for whatever reason, they can be. So we've moved a bunch of things up to the parent class. That's the first big thing in terms of refactoring we did. Similarly, in terms of the way skills are applied, or passive nodes are applied, now all of that code is in exactly one place, instead of some of it being handled by the children types and some of it being handled by the parent types. Now it's just all in the parent types, and hopefully it will sit there. I can't think of a reason yet why it would need to apply at a lower level, but hopefully. But we'll see. Skills should really just do stuff with these modifiers rather than changing how the modifiers are upgraded, because that's crazy. The last thing we did is change a little bit with how the attack works. So if I look at bone bullet attack, minor bit of code here where it's rotating, but I think that's actually in the bone bullet skill. Right, so how we handled the textures, we have 20 different bone bullet textures, and whenever a attack is called for, it will double the number of projectiles, and then it will give its texture from a random list from that. That way, pretty simple stuff. It will, change the texture, rotate it, and make it look a bit more unique every time you fire it. One other little thing here, we now have to tell an attack if they're a crit or not. Obviously that affects how much damage they are, and then that information then needs to get passed on to the hurt box, because the hurt box needs to know if it's a crit, because if it's a crit, then the floating number effect that is generated needs to also be told that it's a crit, so it knows to show itself in red. Currently we've coded it so that crits can stack, crit chance can stack above 100%. So if you had a 150% chance to crit, you would guaranteed crit on every hit, and then 50% to double crit, and it would be an exponential increase in damage. That's just how it is at the moment. We'll see how it ends up with balance. We could make it a linear, we could make it cap at 100%. There's lots of options there, but that's all that. So lots of little updates here, but we're really starting to put the pieces together for version 0.3. Really hoping to get some sound in before that. But yeah, we're about 4 skills away from that release, and really happy with how this game's coming along. Tons of other ideas we've been discussing behind the scenes for like cool little interactions we can have. Lots to come on that front, but I'll talk about that as it comes. For now, thanks for watching this video. If you have any questions or thoughts or suggestions, we're very open to any ideas, because this game is meant to be fun, and if you have an idea that sounds fun, then it probably might be. So yeah, leave a comment. Otherwise, thanks for watching.